All right, so welcome everybody. This is the Children's Literature and Art series. I think this is our fifth or sixth book that we've done. I can't even recall, Karen. Maybe you can jump in there. Fifth, sixth?
Probably about the fifth. I think it's the fifth.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, Karen and I are both artists, and we had the idea to look at really interesting children's literature and do a story, a close read of a story, and then also do an art project that goes along with it. So that is called integrated arts when you're combining two subject matters. So we have language arts, and of course we have art. And so this is a really neat book, and I know Shara can vouch for the fact it's a great book because she's seen it around the office and was really enthusiastic about it. So let's get my forward. Here we go. So if we haven't met, I'm Louisa Higgins, and I'm the arts administrator for the Riverside County, and that's my email address. And I'm really excited about culturally responsive teaching, and that children should have literature in their classroom libraries that reflects them and their culture. And so this was one of the things that Karen and I identified. And so why we picked this particular book to share. And I think our last one was Yayoi Kusama, and before that it was Frida Kahlo. And so we've been moving it around and have done a couple of stories about Native American literature. Karen, over to you.
Hi, I'm Karen Riley, and I am the executive director of the Scrap Gallery, which is Student Creative Recycle Art Program. And we do all kinds of projects that incorporate the environment and taking care of the planet. So I'm excited again to be here with all of you and do some creative work related to this wonderful but sad book.
Yeah, it's poignant for sure. And Karen is definitely an activist for the environment, and I think really shows us how we can use anything around the house or that's around the office and make beautiful things from it. So she really turns recycled things into treasures. So our process was easy when we do these classes is we give you a contextual background about where we're coming from on the story, and then we dive into the story itself. And I usually don't tell the entire story because I really want to encourage you, if you like it, to buy the book. And then we make an art piece based on the literature. So those are the three components of what we're going to be doing this afternoon.
So the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. Albert Camus. So here we go.
So we're going to get into the social studies aspect of this story about Henry Brown. And we're going to tell you a little bit about his personal history before we get into the actual storybook. So in a nutshell, and this is a true story, and I was really surprised I had never heard it before, but Henry Brown was a person, he was nicknamed Box Brown, was a person who ingeniously decided to ship himself like a piece of mail, like a package, to a free state to get away from being a slave. So that is it. If I was to sum it, if that was an elevator speech about this story, that is Henry Brown.
So we learn early on about his life, and he eventually was married and 4 children, and he was unable to live with his family. They were sold too. And his tremendous loss fueled his fervor to escape from slavery.
Right. And I can't even imagine it, right? All of us, one day your family is just sold and they're gone. And that was such a devastating blow. And so that's what made him think of, like, how can I escape from this horrible fate that is happening? And so he was really active in his church, as many people are. And it was his friends in the church community that helped him devise his escape. So he got by with a little help from a friend, so to speak.
Right. So his friend Samuel Smith basically shipped him in a box, and the box was labeled dry goods. It was lined with cloth, and it only had one hole for him to breathe out of. And 27 hours later, he arrived at the Philadelphia Anti-Slavery Society.
I know. Can you even imagine? Like, it's just incredible. I don't think I would last an hour or two because I'm a little claustrophobic. So he was in this box for more than a day and just took it on faith and took a chance. And there he went. And unfortunately, they tried to do this, replicate this situation, and that plan was discovered and there were some arrests made. So his friends, who very bravely and rightly helped him, had some trouble over that, some good trouble, you might say.
So as Louisa mentioned, given the dangers of his escape and it became public, they argued that they would stop doing this, and people were getting in trouble. So once he got to New England, he traveled and he became a performer.
Right. So his story started to become really well known, and so he basically turned it into a production. And then he ended up moving to England, and he had a new family once he got there, and he faced criticism that he didn't come back for his original family. And of course, this is a very complex story and almost impossible to imagine in the context of the present day, right? What it was like for him to navigate his new life. So there was a lot of controversy over this. And of course, we don't judge. We just are really interested in this true story of what this man did.
So he returned to the United States with his English wife, his second family and child, and continued to perform as a magician. And part of his stage act was emerging from the original box that he had been delivered to Philadelphia in.
I can't even imagine doing that. Can you, Karen, to get back in the box? That would be super triggering for me. But he did it. He absolutely did it. And his last performance was recorded. It's not this picture. Obviously, this is modern day performance, but it took place in Canada in the late 1800s.
All right, we're going to do a loose read of Henry's Freedom Box now.
Actually, a close read.
Close read, sorry.
Did you say a loose read?
I didn't get loose. Sorry, close.
Maybe that too. But I mean, and this is really interesting, I think, for the audiences. If you look at this book, this is a retelling of, like we just said, a pretty complicated story, not necessarily a happy story. There's some triumph and there's some tragedy, but that's kind of life, right? And real life. And so I like how they were able to adapt this story into a book for children and keep its authenticity, right? And really highlight his innovative thinking and his ability to triumph over adversity. So we're going to see how the author and the illustrator did this. And this is an award-winning book, so I highly recommend it to you if you're a teacher for your classroom or in your work with children. So we're going to go through and read it to you so you can follow along. And like I said, this is the abridged version. So Henry Brown wasn't sure how old he was. Henry was a slave, and slaves weren't allowed to know their birthdays. Henry and his brothers and sisters worked in the big house where the master lived. Henry's master had been good to Henry and his family. But Henry's mother knew things would change, could change. You see those leaves blowing in the wind? They are torn from the trees like slave children are torn from their families. And here's the first illustration.
One morning, the master called for Henry and his mother. They climbed the wide staircase. The master lay in bed with only his head above the quilt. He was very ill. He beckoned them to come closer. Some slaves were freed by their owners. Henry's heart beat fast. Maybe the owner would set him free. But the master said, "You are a good worker, Henry. I'm giving you to my son. You must obey him and never tell a lie." Henry nodded, but he didn't say thank you. That would have been a lie.
And there's Henry and the master. Later that day, Henry watched a bird soar high above the trees. Free bird, happy bird, Henry thought. Henry said goodbye to his family. He looked across the field. The leaves swirled in the wind. Henry worked in his new master's factory. He was good at his job. "Do not tear that tobacco leaf," the boss yelled at the new boy. He poked the boy with a stick. If you made a mistake, the boss would beat you.
Henry was lonely. One day he met Nancy, who was shopping for her mistress. They walked and talked and agreed to meet again. Henry felt like singing, but slaves didn't dare sing in the streets. Instead, he hummed all the way home. Months later, Henry asked Nancy to be his wife. When both their masters agreed, Henry and Nancy were married. Soon there was a little baby, then another and another. Henry knew they were very lucky. They lived together even though they had different masters.
And there's Henry's family. But Nancy was worried. Her master had lost a great deal of money. I'm afraid he will sell our children, she said. Henry sat very still. Henry worked hard all morning. He tried to forget what Nancy had said. His friend James came into the factory. He whispered to Henry, "Your wife and children were just sold at the slave market." "No!" cried Henry.
Henry couldn't move. He couldn't think. He couldn't work. "Twist that tobacco," the boss poked Henry. Henry twisted tobacco leaves. His heart twisted in his chest.
At lunchtime, Henry rushed to the center of town. A large group of slaves was tied together. The owner shouted at them. Henry looked for his family. "Father, father!" Henry watched his children disappear down the road. Where was Nancy? He saw her at the same moment she saw him. When he wiped away his tears, Nancy, too, was gone.
Henry no longer sang. He couldn't hum. He went to work, and at night he ate supper and went to bed. Henry tried to think of happy times, but all he could see were the carts carrying away everything he loved. Henry knew he would never see his family again. Many weeks passed. One morning, Henry heard singing. A little bird flew out of a tree into the open sky, and Henry thought about being free. But how? As he lifted a crate, he knew the answer.
He asked James and Dr. Smith to help him. Dr. Smith was a white man who thought slavery was wrong. They met early the next day at an empty warehouse. Henry arrived with a box. "I will mail myself to a place where there are no slaves," he said. James stared at the box, then at Henry. "What if you cough and someone hears you?" "I will cover my mouth and hope."
Dr. Smith wrote on the box, "To William H. Johnson, Arch Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania." Henry would be delivered to friends in Philadelphia. Then he printed on the crate in big letters, "This side up with care." Henry needed an excuse to stay home, or the work boss would think he had run off. James pointed to Henry's sore finger, but Henry knew it wasn't bad enough. He opened a bottle of oil of vitriol.
"No!" cried James. Henry poured it on his hand. It burnt his skin to the bone. Now the boss would have to let him stay home. Dr. Smith bandaged Henry's hand. They arranged to meet the next morning at 4:00. The sun was not yet up when Henry climbed into the box. "Ready," he said. James nailed down the lid.
Dr. Smith and James drove to the station. The railroad clerk tipped the box over and nailed a paper to the bottom. Dr. Smith begged the clerks to be careful, but they didn't listen. They just threw the box into the baggage car. Hours passed. Henry was lifted up and thrown again, upside down. He heard waves splashing. This must be the steamboat headed for Washington, D.C. The ship rode smoothly, but Henry was still upside down.
Blood rushed to his head. His face got hot. His eyes ached. He thought his head would burst, but he was afraid to move. Someone might hear him. "I'm tired of standing," someone said. "Why don't we move that box and sit on it?" said another. Henry held his breath. Could they be talking about his box? Henry was pushed. The box scraped the deck. Now he was on his right side, now on his left, and suddenly, right side up.
"What do you think is in here?" said the first man. "Mail, I guess," said the other. "I am mail," thought Henry, "but not the kind they imagine." Henry was carried off the steamboat and placed in a rail car, this time heads up. He fell asleep to the rattling song of the train wheels. He awoke to loud knocking. "Henry, Are you all right in there? All right, he answered.
The cover was pried open. Henry stretched and stood up. 4 men smiled at him. Welcome to Philadelphia. At last, Henry had a birthday, March 30th, 1849, his first day of freedom. And from that day on, he also had a middle name. Everyone called him Henry Box Brown. Okay, so that is the incredibly strange and true story of Henry Box Brown and his bravery and the way his friends helped him. And it's just really incredible. And I can't believe I was well into adulthood before I ever heard this story. So we think it's a great one to share with students, and really shows the dignity of the human spirit and the perseverance that he showed. So now it's time for the art, Karen.
Okay. So we're going to go over the materials that you will need.
And you should have your kit with you, and then also these items.
So you're going to need scissors, glue stick, tape, anything that'll just so you can affix it. A Sharpie or even a black marker will work. Material, and the materials from the kit. Now, we provided a box, which, because we're the scrap gallery, we get materials that we're going to be in the trash, so we try and reuse those. So that's why you have little gift boxes. We got a supply of gift boxes, but actually you could use any box for this. And then wire, pipe cleaners, and then I think we attached some photocopies in there. So that's what you need to get started.
Okay. And I'm sorry I don't have tape on the list, but I think most of us have ready access, and any kind of pen really will work. And we've kind of broken it down in terms of what are the steps that will help you to be most successful. And so here, Karen will give them to you.
So in your kit, you have some brown paper, which is a lunch bag, I think. Most of you have that in there. And so what I did is I covered that box with the paper, kind of wrapped it, and then I labeled the box this side up with care. And I glued, you can cut out those images and glue them to the front or back. You decide what the front and the back is. And then with the wire or the pipe cleaner, I glued those birds that were very important to Henry and his story. And I just kind of arched them up to make them stick a little bit easier. I glued one in front and I glued them together with the pipe cleaner in between it. And there's an example of the one I did. But really, this is just to show you just start with a box. If you're using boxes that you're saving at school, those will work. They're automatically brown cardboard, so they would work just as well.
For sure. And we don't like to actually give you too many examples because we love you to do your own thing. This is what I call freedom within a structure. So we're going to go ahead and set the timer for 15 minutes. This is our art making time for you to thoughtfully think about how you want to construct your project. And I'm actually going to put on some music from the late 1800s in America to set the mood. And if you don't care for that, just go ahead and mute us and then come back when you see Gallery Walk up on the screen. So I will go ahead and stop share for a minute so I can get that music up, and away we go. So let's and here's the music.
Thinking about going solar, but not sure whether it's worth it.
Your home. Well, before you get quotes, there are 3 things you need to know about going solar, and one. Come join hand in hand, brave Americans all, and rouse your bold hearts at heard his call. No tyrannous act shall suppress your just claim, or stain with dishonor America's name. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we live. Our purses are ready. Steady, boys, steady, not as slaves, but as free men our money will give. Our worthy forefathers, let's give them a cheer. To climates unknown did courageously steer. Through oceans to deserts for freedom they came, and dying bequeathed us their freedom and fame. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we live. Our purses are ready. Steady, boys, steady, not as slaves, but as free men our money will give. The tree their own hands had to liberty reared, they lived to behold growing strong and revered. With transport they cried, now our wishes we gain, for our children shall gather the fruits of our pain. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we live. Our purses are ready. Steady, boys, steady, not as slaves, but as free men our money will give. Then join hand in hand, brave Americans all. By uniting we stand, by dividing we fall. In so righteous a cause let us hope to succeed, for heaven approves of each generous deed. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we live. Our purses are ready. Steady, boys, steady, not as slaves, but as free men our money will give. This bumper I crown for our sovereign's health, and this for Britannia's glory and wealth. That wealth and that glory immortal may be, if she is but just, and if we are but free. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we live. Our purses are ready. Steady, boys, steady, not as slaves, but as free men our money will give.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me. Oh, swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me
Okay, we have about 5 more minutes.
In the Mathis Design Studio, get 20% off our everyday 50% discount line-wide on AR. I'll be so glad when the sun goes down. I'll be so glad when the sun goes down. Sleeping, doesn't matter, baby. Can't see. Oh, doesn't matter, baby. Yeah, can't see. No, it's hard that a driver go on me. No, it's hard that a driver go on me. Down. Yeah. Yeah. You will live and free. You will live and for free. Trouble
You won't write to me, baby. You won't write to me. I'm in a world of trouble. You won't write.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. Over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. I'll be buried in my own grave. Go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Freedom.
Don't get
Okay. Back to the back to our PowerPoint.
Those were great images. Was that on YouTube with the
It was on YouTube. That was a very powerful video, wasn't it? Made me a little teary.
Right.
And my husband has told me the story about when he was a little boy in St. Louis walking with his parents in a march with Dr. King. So that made me well up just watching it. And I think it's the reason, I think Karen would agree, that's the reason we chose this particular story, because, you know, it talks about an important part of American history, difficult but true. And we want to put forth literature that promotes respect for all cultures and also empathy for others. So it's a rich a book that we worked with. So this is the time that we really look forward to, Karen and I, the gallery walk, which is when we share our artwork and give positive feedback to others, which is actually part of the 2 artistic processes. 2 of the 4 are relating and connecting. So it means, like, you can look at the gal who's looking at the painting and she's relating to it. She's putting it into context. She's doing analysis. She's critiquing it. And then connecting is when you see artwork and you relate it to yourself and your own personal experience. So when we're doing our gallery walk, we want to be positive. Like, I really like how you did, you know, something specific, helpful and specific. So I'm going to take it off screen so that we can share. And then if you could just come off mute and hold it up, I'll pin you. And then we can share a couple of our projects that we did, because it's always amazing how different everyone's looks. So who's going to jump in there and go first? Okay, Kim, I see you. Let me pin you. Oh, okay. You want to tell us anything about it?
So the blackbird at the top is Henry, and he's flying with the birds and the leaves free. And I did not have tape, and I'm in somebody else's office, so I had to really wing it. So I even had to use a paper clip, and I'm holding it completely together. So
there you go. Or a stapler would do too.
No, I'm in a conference room, so I actually don't have any supplies. So I had to wing it, but this still turned out fine.
Very cool. Okay, well, way to persevere through a little bit of an artistic challenge. That's what artists do. Love it. Okay, thank you for being first to share. Okay, so let me change the view. Hold on 1 second. Back to the gallery. Okay. All right. Anybody else like to share what they did?
I'll share mine.
Good. Thank you. Let me okay. Keep this down off. There we go. Okay. Can you hold it up a
I wish I had more birds.
Huh?
I wish I had more birdies.
Oh, okay. How many do we have in the kids? Like 6?
I got 4.
2, 4, 6.
Oh no.
That's right. And then I realized I had some more paper in my in my bag, and I could have used these other pictures, but I cut it out of the flyer.
Right.
Oh, that's,
And then
yeah,
I
that's
put it-
fine. Yeah.
And I put it in.
That's the fun thing about art. There's not a right or wrong, and you do it your way, right?
Yeah.
With the materials given. So great job. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Go back to the gallery view. Okay, anyone else? Mary, I'm gonna click over to you. You want to tell us what you were up to?
Yeah, I was just thinking, like my quote, the Emily Dickinson, hope is a hope. Oh my goodness, how did that
The
quote
thing
go?
with wings, right?
Feathers that perches with in your soul.
Mm-hmm.
So it made me think of that with Henry trying to reach freedom with not giving up on hope.
Exactly. I love that. And how many of us would be that brave, right? He's an amazing person. Thank you. Awesome, Mary. Thanks. Okay, anyone else?
I'll share. This is my box.
Okay.
And then this is the back. And then inside, I put Henry.
What?
Genius.
You're so clever. I love that.
You thought outside of the box.
Me too. I love it. I did the same thing.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
very clever.
Cute.
That's so
That's
cute.
awesome. I love it.
I see a young man here in the corner, Mr. Delatorre. Kevin, are you willing to share? Let's see. Looks like you were making something pretty amazing there, my friend. Can you hold it up? Okay. Oops. This is what you call kid tested and approved. This side up with care. Wow. Awesome job.
The bird up here fell.
Oh,
Okay.
You know what? We could always glue it back up there. Okay. Did you get help?
There's like two birds in here because it fell.
Oh, okay. Well, that can be fixed. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. I don't, no offense to anyone else, but I think these are our most awesome members of this art class for sure. Yay. Thank
Yay.
you.
Good job, you guys. That looks great.
Okay. Anyone else before we wrap up? Lily's like, don't call me. Don't call on me. Okay, here we go. Karina, gonna add a pin. Okay, so Karina, you got all the birds.
I think so.
I think whoever said they only
Seen that. Somebody
have
got
the
all the
birds.
birds.
But you know what? I put them to good use.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
I like how you have him up at the top of the box. That looks very cool. And you kind of went in landscape mode. Mhm.
Yeah.
Very nicely done.
Yeah, not everyone got the same size box. So
That's true. You never know. The kit is like a lovely surprise. You never know what's going to show up, right? Just
you're
like,
gonna get kind of the same thing.
right? Awesome. Thank you. Okay, well, I'm going to click back over to the PowerPoint. And that's pretty much a wrap. I want to say thank you to everybody for making time in your day to get creative. And I also wanted to share with you the resources. If you really enjoyed the story and you're interested in it, there's more that you can find out. The beautiful slides are from Slides Carnival, which has free PowerPoint slides to use. And then PBS Underground Railroad Stories, biography.com on Henry Box Brown, and Encyclopedia Virginia are what we use as our source material. So that is it. I want to thank everybody for joining Karen and I. We love having you. We love hanging out with you. And we'll see you next time. And we'll stay on if there's any questions. But otherwise, bye-bye.
you.
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.